Hello, my friends. Imagine this for a moment. Someone asks you a simple question in English, just one question. Where are you from? You know exactly how to answer. The answer is right there in your mind. But somehow, between your brain and your mouth, something gets stuck. You pause. Your mind suddenly goes blank. The words are inside you. You can almost reach them, but they refuse to come out. The silence feels longer than it really is. Your face starts to feel warm. Your heart beats a little faster. And one thought keeps repeating in your head. Why can't I just speak? This has happened to you before. Maybe once, maybe many times. And each time you might think, my English is not good enough. Maybe you blamed your vocabulary. Maybe you blamed your grammar. Maybe you even blamed your accent. But here's something important to know. The problem was not your English. The real problem is that your brain has not learned how to speak English comfortably yet. Not because your brain is weak or slow. It's because speaking a language and studying a language are not the same thing. You can learn lots of English words and grammar rules, but your brain also needs practice using them in real conversations. And that kind of training is very different from just studying from a book. Can I ask you a simple question? Have you ever listened to someone speaking English and understood everything they said? You knew exactly what they were talking about, but then they asked you a question, and suddenly your mind went blank. You knew the answer. The words were somewhere in your head, but when it was time to speak, nothing came out. And in that moment, you didn't just feel embarrassed, you felt confused. You started wondering, if I can understand English, why can't I speak it? That's a really good question. And today, we're going to answer it, clearly, honestly, and in a way that nobody has explained to you before. Before we go any further, I want you to remember something important. You are not bad at English. You are not slow. And you are not someone who just can't learn languages. Many people believe that about themselves, but it's simply not true. I've seen this happen again and again. Smart, hardworking people can understand English very well. Yet when it's time to speak, they suddenly become quiet. The reason is simple. Understanding a language and speaking a language are two different skills. You already have one of those skills. You can understand English. Now it's time to build the other one. And that's exactly what we're going to work on today. By the end of this video, you will clearly understand why your brain suddenly freezes when you try to speak English. You will see what is really happening inside your mind during that uncomfortable silence. And even more importantly, you will learn simple, real, and 9 practical brain training tips to improve it. Not overnight, not like magic, but in a real way that works if you practice it. That is my promise to you today. There is a boy who studied English for 7 years in school. 7 full years of grammar rules, vocabulary lists, reading passages, and written exams. He passed all of them, and his written English was actually quite good. But one day, a tourist stopped him on the street and asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the railway station?" He understood every single word. But in that moment, he panicked. His mouth opened, then closed. He couldn't speak. He just pointed in the direction of the station, gave an awkward smile, and quickly walked away. 7 years of English, gone in just 5 seconds of fear. That boy was not stupid. What happened to him is something millions of English learners experience every single day. And the reason is actually simple. School taught him English as a subject, not as a skill for real communication. Nobody trained his brain to use English in real conversations. And speaking confidence is a skill, just like riding a bicycle. It only grows when you actually practice doing it in real situations. So why does your brain freeze? Here is the real answer. When you try to speak English, your brain is doing 5 things at the same time. It is searching for the right words. It is putting those words into a sentence. It is checking the grammar. It is handling your nervousness. And it is also watching the other person's face while all of this happening. 5 things at once, in a language that still doesn't feel fully natural. No wonder your mind goes blank. It is not a sign of weakness, it is simply too much at one time. And when something feels like overload, the solution is not more pressure, it is practice, until speaking becomes automatic. Here is your first brain training tip. And it is so simple that you might almost ignore it, but please don't ignore it. Every morning, before you check your phone or talk to anyone, say 3 sentences out loud in English about anything. For example, today is Monday. I feel a little tired. I want to drink tea. That is enough. Just 3 simple sentences, spoken out loud in your own voice. Why does this matter? Because your brain tends to settle into the first language you use in the day. If you spend the first few hours speaking your native language and then suddenly try to switch to English, your brain resists. But if English is the first thing you say in the morning, even for a few seconds, your mind becomes a little more open to it for the rest of the day. Let me ask you something that might feel a little uncomfortable. When you imagine yourself speaking English in your mind, how do you see it going? Do you see yourself speaking smoothly, confidently, and naturally? Or do you picture yourself making mistakes, getting confused, and people correcting you? Be honest with yourself, because whatever you imagine again and again is what your brain starts preparing for. Your imagination is not just daydreaming. It is a kind of practice, and it can become the wrong kind of practice if you are constantly imagining failure instead of progress. This is something researchers have studied very carefully. Athletes use it. Speakers use it too. Before an important moment, they close their eyes and imagine success. Not perfect success, but simple and clear success. A tennis player imagines hitting the ball correctly. A singer imagines their voice flowing smoothly. And interestingly, the brain reacts to these imagined moments in a way that is similar to real practice. So from today, when you imagine yourself speaking English, don't imagine failure. Imagine it going okay. Not perfect, just okay. Imagine the words coming out. Imagine yourself continuing, even if you make a mistake. This small change in your thinking starts to slowly retrain your brain. Now let me tell you something important about the word fluency, because I think many people misunderstand it. Most learners believe that being fluent means speaking very fast, never pausing, never making mistakes, and always using perfect English. But that is not fluency. That is performance. Real fluency is much simpler. It means being able to express your thoughts clearly enough for another person to understand you. That's it. A person who speaks slowly, pauses sometimes, uses simple words, but communicates clearly, that person is fluent. Speed is not fluency. Clarity is fluency. And clarity is something you can build much faster than you think. Have you ever noticed something interesting? When you are relaxed, talking to a close friend, joking with a family member, or speaking in a situation where nobody is judging you, your English often becomes much better. The words come more quickly. Your sentences feel more natural. You don't freeze as much. But the moment you feel watched, tested, or judged, everything suddenly becomes harder. Here is your second brain training tip. Find one person where speaking English feels safe. It could be a younger sibling, a friend who is also learning English, or a classmate who wants to improve. The important thing is that they won't judge your mistakes, because they are learning too. Then make a simple agreement. Every day, for just 5 minutes, speak only English. Not perfect English, just English. Don't worry about grammar mistakes. It doesn't matter if you say, I go to market yesterday, instead of, I went to the market yesterday. What matters is that you spoke. What matters is that your brain experienced using English in a safe and comfortable situation. Each time you do this, you teach your brain that speaking English is not something to fear, and that small, imperfect practice is slowly changing your relationship with speaking in a very real way. I want to tell you something about your comfort zone, but probably not in the way you've heard before. People often say, step outside your comfort zone, as if it's easy, as if you can wake up one morning, decide not to be afraid anymore, and suddenly everything changes. But that is not how it works. Your comfort zone is not just a way of thinking. It is built from experiences that your brain has learned to see as safe. So instead of pushing yourself into a big English conversation that feels overwhelming, start at the edge. Leave one simple comment on a YouTube video in English. Something as small as, "This was very helpful." That's enough. The next day, write 2 sentences in English somewhere. These may seem like tiny actions, but they matter more than you think. And little by little, your brain starts to feel safer. Before we go any further, I want you to do something with me right now, not later, right now. Find a comfortable place to sit. Take a deep breath and repeat these sentences out loud. Don't just read them in your mind. Say them with your own voice. Ready? Let's go. I am training my brain to speak English. I am training my brain to speak English. Now you repeat. Here is another. I do not need to be perfect to communicate. I do not need to be perfect to communicate. Now you repeat. Every time I speak, I get a little better. Every time I speak, I get a little better. Now you repeat. I can speak English 1 sentence at a time. I can speak English 1 sentence at a time. Now you repeat. Very nice. My confidence grows every time I practice. My confidence grows every time I practice. Now you repeat. And here is one last sentence. I am becoming a more confident English speaker every day. I am becoming a more confident English speaker every day. Well done. If some of those sentences felt a little strange, that's okay. The important thing is that you said them out loud. Every time you use your voice in English, you are teaching your brain that speaking is something normal, safe, and possible. And that is exactly how confidence begins to grow. Can I be honest with you about something? One of the biggest reasons many people struggle to speak English today is the way English was taught to them in school. Think about your own experience. For years, you sat in a classroom reading textbooks, memorizing grammar rules, learning vocabulary, writing answers on paper, and taking tests in silence. But how often were you asked to have a real conversation? How often do you make mistakes and learn from them without feeling embarrassed? For many people, the answer is almost never. School taught English as a subject to study and pass exams, not as a language to use in everyday life. So now, when you try to speak, your brain knows many rules and words, but it has very little real experience using them in real conversations. And that is why speaking can feel so difficult, even when you understand a lot of English already. Here is your 3rd brain training tip. At first, it might feel a little strange, but give it a chance for just 1 week before you decide whether it works or not. Start talking to yourself in English throughout the day. You don't have to say anything out loud. Just use English inside your mind. When you are cooking, think, I am cutting the vegetables. When you are walking outside, think, the weather is nice today. After a long day, you might think, I feel a little tired right now. There is no notebook, no grammar test, and no pressure to be perfect. You are simply using English to describe your everyday life. This small habit helps your brain become more familiar with thinking in English instead of constantly translating from another language. And the more comfortable your brain becomes with thinking in English, the easier it becomes to speak it. Children learn language this way naturally, and your brain can develop the same skill no matter how old you are. Now I want to talk about something called muscle memory. Because speaking English is not only a brain activity, it is also a physical one. Your mouth, your tongue, and your throat are all involved when you speak. And just like any other muscles in your body, they become more comfortable through repetition. That is why speaking out loud is so important. So let's do a quick practice together. Don't just read the sentences in your mind. Say them out loud and try to copy the rhythm and pronunciation as closely as you can. Are you ready? So, let's begin. I can speak English one sentence at a time. I can speak English one sentence at a time. Now you repeat. Mistakes help me learn and improve. Mistakes help me learn and improve. Now you repeat. Every day, my English is getting better. Every day, my English is getting better. Now you repeat. Here is the last sentences. I am becoming more confident every time I speak. I am becoming more confident every time I speak. Great. If those sentences felt a little awkward, that's completely normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to get your mouth used to producing English sounds comfortably and naturally. The more you do this, the easier speaking will begin to feel. Here is your fourth brain training tip. Every time you make a mistake, don't punish yourself for it. Instead, do something simple. Correct yourself and keep going. If you use the wrong word, say the right one and continue. Making a mistake is not a sign that you are failing. In fact, correcting a mistake is proof that learning is happening. Every time you notice an error and fix it out loud, your brain is adjusting, improving, and getting stronger. It is exactly how real learning works. The fifth brain training tip is to reduce the time between thinking and speaking. Here is how it works. When a thought comes to you in your native language, try not to fully build the perfect sentence in your head first, and then translate it into English. Instead, start speaking the English version before it feels complete or perfect in your mind. I know this can feel uncomfortable. Your brain naturally wants to wait until everything is ready before it speaks. But that waiting is exactly what creates the delay and makes speaking feel difficult. Try pushing the sentence out while it is still forming. Let it be a little rough. Let it be slightly unfinished at the start, or even uncertain at the end. This is actually how fluent speakers often think. They begin speaking and trust that the rest of the sentence will come naturally. And with practice, it does. Let me tell you about a simple thing that changed everything for one of my students. She was afraid to speak English on the phone. Face to face, she could manage. She could read expressions, use hand gestures, and quickly check if the other person understood her. But on the phone, it was different. No faces, no support, just pure fear and silence. So we tried something very small. Every day for 2 weeks, she made one short phone call in English to a shop or a local office and asked just one simple question like, "What time do you open?" or "Do you have this item available?" One question, one call, about 30 seconds. On the first day, her voice was shaking. On the second day, it was a little more comfort. By the end of 2 weeks, her brain had successfully handled 12 phone calls in English. Every small conversation you manage in English becomes new evidence. Every mistake you make and survive becomes new evidence. Every imperfect sentence you complete becomes new evidence. In a way, you are not just learning English, You are building a new file inside your brain. And little by little, that new file starts to become stronger than the old one. I want to pause here and ask you something personal. When was the last time you felt even a small moment of pride about your English? Not a big achievement, just something small. Maybe you understood a complete lyrics of a song. Maybe you read a sign and immediately knew what it meant. Maybe you said something in English and the other person understood you clearly. When was the last time you really noticed that? Because I believe you are improving more than you realize. There are small wins happening around you all the time. But you might be walking past them without paying attention. And noticing your progress is not arrogance. It is fuel. It gives you strength to keep going, especially on the difficult days. And those days will come. Now, here is your 6th brain training tip. And this one is about learning vocabulary in a way that actually helps you speak, not just memorize. Most people try to learn new words by writing lists, word on one side, meaning on the other. They repeat the list, forget it, and repeat it again. And nothing really changes. But there is a better way. When you learn a new word, use it immediately in a sentence about your own life. Not a textbook sentence, but something real and personal. For example, if the word is exhausted, say, I feel exhausted after work on Fridays. If the word is frustrated, say, I feel frustrated when English words don't come quickly. This works because your brain remembers words much better when they are connected to your own experiences and emotions, rather than just definitions on a page. Now, think about this for a moment. When you learn English, how much time do you spend reading and listening? And how much time do you spend actually speaking? Be honest. Most people spend a lot of time reading books, watching videos, or listening to English, but very little time speaking it. Sometimes, out of 100 minutes of learning, they may spend 90 minutes reading and listening, and only 10 minutes speaking. That is why speaking time is very important. You need to make time for speaking, even when it feels a little scary or uncomfortable. It may be easier to watch another video or read another lesson. But if you want to speak English well, you must practice speaking regularly. Let me tell you something many people feel but do not say. Sometimes, we are not afraid to speak English with strangers. We are afraid to speak with people we know, like classmates, cousins, or friends. We worry that if we make a mistake, they might remember it or laugh at us. So, instead of speaking, we stay quiet. Have you ever felt this way? If you felt, please share.